It's here, not in the sense you want it to be, not a body on a slab, not a skull in a museum drawer, but here in the record, in the mud, in the reports out of Alaska that have never once stopped coming. That's what I mean. And I want to walk you through exactly what that word is doing before anybody nails it to a headline. I've cut tracks in wet snow at 4 in the afternoon when the light goes flat and blue and a bear print starts telling you lies. I've stood on drainages off the Susitna where the nearest road was a 2-day walk behind me. So when I tell you the honest version of this Alaska story is stranger than the loud version, I'm not being coy. I'm telling you what the country does to evidence. Let me kill something on my own side first, because that's the only way I earn the rest of it. The famous buried footage, the clip people say was shot near Portage Glacier and pulled from circulation within days, I've watched it more times than I'd like to admit, and the provenance has never been confirmed, not once. Nobody credible has stood up and said where it was shot, who shot it, what camera. It surfaces, it gets scrubbed, it comes back with a new caption. That's not a chain of custody. That's a rumor with a thumbnail. If your whole case is that clip, you don't have a case. I'll say it plainer than the people selling it will. As proof of an animal, it's worth nothing. So why am I still standing here talking to you about it? Because the footage was never the interesting part. The interesting part is the country, and what the country is capable of hiding. Here's the number that reframes everything. Alaska is a fifth the size of the entire lower 48, and it has fewer miles of road than a single average American county. Think about that ratio. Fewer roads than one county, spread across a landmass where you could lose Texas twice and still have room. There are drainages up there no human boot has touched in a decade. There are valleys off the Wrangells and the Alaska Range that get one overflight a year, if that. You want to know how a large animal stays invisible? It doesn't need a conspiracy, it needs geography, and Alaska has more of that than anywhere on the continent. And look, the doubters are right about one thing, and it's the biggest thing. Nobody. In 100+ years of claims, nobody has produced a carcass, a skeleton, a confirmed set of remains. In most of the world, that's fatal to the argument, and it should be. But hold that against a second number before you close the book. A downed aircraft up there can vanish for 40 years. 40. Fully intact planes made of metal, with search parties actively looking, swallowed by muskeg and spruce and snow, until a hunter stumbles on the wreck 4 decades later. Now ask yourself what happens to a few hundred pounds of hide and bone that dies in a den in November in country nobody surveys. 500 search flights couldn't find aluminum. Nobody's flying grid patterns for bone. Not enough to confirm anything, not enough to dismiss it either. So who's actually reporting this? Because that matters more than any clip. The regional sighting database logs somewhere between 30 and 40 reports out of Alaska, and they don't scatter randomly. They cluster, heaviest in the southeast panhandle, down around the Tongass, and up in the Susitna Valley north of Anchorage. That clustering is the first thing that made me sit up. Random hoaxes scatter. Real animal sightings cluster on habitat and food. 30 to 40 reports, and they land exactly where the salmon runs and the old growth cover are thickest. Now here's where I have to correct something people repeat constantly. They'll tell you this is all imported folklore, a Pacific Northwest story that floated north with the loggers. It isn't. The Tlingit and the Athabascan peoples have oral traditions that predate any English word for any of this. The Kushtaka, the otter man, is its own thing, a shapeshifter of the water, and I'm not going to flatten it into the pop culture creature because it isn't that. But alongside it, separately, there's a tall, hairy woodsman figure in that tradition too, described for generations before a single outside camera showed up. A lot of people repeat that those two figures are the same story. They're not. And the difference matters because one of them describes an animal. Village elders on the lower Kuskokwim have talked about a tall man for as long as anyone's been asking. Same details over and over from people who've never met each other. It raids the fish-drying racks. It screams across the river at night. A sound they'll tell you isn't a wolf, isn't a bear, isn't a loon, and they know every one of those animals cold because their lives depend on knowing them. A trapper working a line off the lower Kuskokwim doesn't confuse a bear for something else. That's his job, that's his food. 7 of those Kuskokwim accounts got logged with local authorities over the years. 7. And not one of them got a formal investigation. Logged. Filed under unverified. Closed. So if the people who read that country their whole lives keep describing the same animal, Why hasn't anybody proven it? Because the search net up there is a joke, and once you see the holes in it, no evidence stops meaning what you think it means. Down in the Panhandle, the terrain does the hiding for you. The Tongass is the largest temperate rainforest in North America, close to 17 million acres of Sitka spruce and hemlock, with a canopy so dense that at midday on the forest floor you're walking in dusk. I've been in it. You can lose your own hunting partner at 80 feet in there. Radar won't see through it. Satellites see the tops of trees. The one tool that actually finds animals in that country is a human being on foot, and there are almost none of them across a forest bigger than some states. Then there's the black bear problem, and this is where I split from the true believers, because they hate this part. A black bear standing to feed on a berry bank, seen at range through rain backlit, is one of the great optical illusions in the North American woods. I've watched experienced guides call one wrong. The shoulders read wide. The gait, when it takes a few steps upright, reads bipedal. A big chunk of these 30 to 40 reports, a big chunk, are almost certainly exactly that. I'd throw out more than half on principle, maybe more. But here's the report that stays with me, the one I can't file away. A warden gets a call in the Susitna Valley, and he actually goes. 2 days later, he finds a line of impressions in soft ground along a creek. Deep, long-strided, pressed in hard. And the wording in his own report is doing a lot of work. He writes that they were inconsistent with known bear morphology. And then he stops. He doesn't say what they were consistent with. He just closes it. I've read that report. Snow and melt were already filling the tracks by the time he got there, so there was nothing left to cast. 2 days. That's the whole story of Alaska in 2 days. By the time anyone with authority arrives, the country has already erased the page. Now hold two numbers next to each other, because this is the argument in a single frame. 30 to 40 reports clustered on prime habitat. One road for every county's worth of land. Put those side by side. In any other state, that ratio would mean nothing. Up there, it means the reports are coming from the exact places nobody can check, in the exact volume you'd expect if something rare were moving through and only occasionally crossing a human being. This strides the detail that won't leave me alone. Across the accounts that describe tracks, not the ones that describe a fleeting shape, the ones with impressions on the ground, the step length keeps landing somewhere in the range of 4 to 5 feet, heel to heel. A tall man sprinting maxes out well short of that at a walk. Whatever pressed those, if anything did, wasn't a person in boots. Could be a hoax. Somebody with fake feet and a lot of patience and a very cold sense of humor. That happens, and I've seen the fakes, and they're usually bad. But you don't hoax the bottom of a creek drainage 40 miles from the nearest truck and then leave before anyone can see you take a bow. There's no audience out there. That's what nags at me. The good hoax needs a crowd. This country has none. Let me tell you what a real animal would look like if it were up there, because this is where biology either saves the story or kills it. It would not be establishing anything. It would not be building a visible population you could survey. It would be sparse, low density, spread thin across enormous range. The way wolverines are, the way lynx are in a bad hair year. Animals like that you can share a valley with for a season and never know. They move at the edges of light. They go quiet when you're near. They don't owe you a sighting. I've spent weeks in wolverine country and seen one wolverine. That doesn't mean there was one. It means there was one that let me. Some years, the ice on the interior rivers runs continuous enough that a large animal could walk 200 miles and never break trail. Some years, it doesn't. Some winters, the snow buries a food source and pushes everything down into the river valleys where people live. Some winters, it doesn't. That variability is why the reports come in waves. Heavy some years, silent for 3. People point at the silent years and say, see, it was never there. I look at the same gap and see an animal that moved on or died or just didn't need to come down to the fish racks that season, so I'll give the skeptics their strongest hand because they've earned it and because I won't cheat you. No body, no bone, no clean footage in the smartphone era, when every hunter in the Mat-Su is carrying a camera that shoots in 4K. That last one lands hard. It should bother you. It bothers me. If this animal exists at the density a landscape like that could support, our cameras are still catching almost nothing. That is a genuine problem for the story, and anybody who waves it away is selling you something. Here's my honest answer to it, and it's not a dodge. At the density that country could hold, a handful of animals across a range the size of the Tongass, you wouldn't expect a good clip every year. You'd expect exactly what we have. A trickle, blurry, from the deep country where the phones can't hold a signal or a steady hand. The absence of the perfect video isn't the absence of the animal. It's the signature of an animal so rare and so remote that a perfect video would be the surprise, not the rule. So I've stopped asking whether Bigfoot is real. That question's too small, and it's built to make you look foolish either way. Here's the bigger one, the one I actually can answer. If a fully intact airplane can lie in that country for 40 years with people searching for it, what's our honest confidence that we'd have found a rare, sparse, deliberately elusive large mammal that isn't advertising its address? Strip out the footage. Strip out the folklore. Just answer the geography. And when I run it honestly, the number I land on isn't 0. It's not high. But it isn't 0, and every wildlife biologist I respect goes quiet in exactly the same spot when you put it to them straight. That word again. It's here. I still can't nail it to a slab. But I can tell you the record is here. The tracks off that Susitna Creek were here until the melt took them, and the elders on the Kuskokwim were describing the same tall shape long before anyone handed them a name for it. Somewhere north of Portage tonight, the light's going flat and blue over country nobody's walked in years. The snow's coming down soft into a set of impressions we'll never get to cast, and the river keeps doing what it's always done up there. It fills the tracks back in.